You're listening to the podcast for all of the news, notes, and breakdowns for your Ohio State Buckeyes. This is Sons of the Shoe with Nick Wilson and Spencer German.
Sons of the Shoe is back. Ohio State still practicing down yonder in Columbus as spring practices are running rampant. We will get into the latest from spring practice. We will get into the latest potentially from the portal, what it could mean for Ohio State. And a fond farewell has sure turned real sour real quick in Columbus as well. But as we are a relatively new podcast, please make sure to follow Sons of the Shoe wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, Spotify, 92.3 The Fan, the free Odyssey app, Apple. Follow the show. We appreciate it, but you guys help us stay on the air here. Now I'm sounding like we're some sort of 24-hour drive. Only you can save Nick and Spencer's careers. Also, don't forget to follow us on 92.3 The Fan's YouTube channel, and make sure to leave your comments here on today's episode as well. We greatly appreciate it. But, Spencer, how you doing?
Doing well, getting over a cold because the weather just won't ever stay the same. But it's that time of year. So it's also the time of year, I guess, to worry about people potentially leaving Ohio State because there's all kinds of rumors. So I'm interested to see what your panic level is at. A non-Michigan panic meter level.
It's funny. I think you just want me to panic. I think you like it when I panic because
I like to watch you squirm.
I've jammed you up so many times about you panicking that it makes you feel safe. Like, like when like you're in a chaos situation and you look over and somebody's like hyper calm and it calms you down. That's you, but with panic. Like you want me to keep looking over at you and panic to the same degree that you panic on damn near everything.
Well, you like reassurance on those types of things. We also, because obviously you missed the very tail end of our episode earlier in the week.
I heard
we didn't get your panic meter reaction. So I'm curious with the Tony Alford stuff. So there's a lot of different things that we could be panicking about today. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm dangerously close to grabbing my crotch and say, I got your panic meter right here. That's what I think about you changing your level of panic on the friggin' Michigan panic meter because a friggin' running backs coach went to friggin' Michigan. Now, obviously this week has been really interesting. There's a lot of interesting quotes coming out of Columbus, but two of the more noteworthy things, the quarterback competition rages on, which we'll get to in a moment, but Jeremiah Smith now becomes the fastest Buckeye to have his black stripe removed 4 practices. And now the previously old record was set last year by Carnell Tate, who had his black stripe removed in 5 practices. So I'll ask you, does this impact your hype on Jeremiah Smith?
I mean, I just feel like, they've softened the requirements these days. They don't make them like it used to be a lot harder to get your black stripe taken off. Now they're just going soft on people because they don't want to lose anybody in the transfer portal and make them feel like they're not. No, I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding.
Here's the funny thing is I actually agree with you. Like I absolutely do think.
Wait, really?
Yes. I don't think it's just because of the portal, but I think you used to have to it was pretty common practice that you didn't earn your black stripe till leading up to the season. And the idea that it happens pretty much for multiple guys in spring practice, it takes some of the special out of it. It doesn't really mean anything anymore. It's more of it's more of a hair tussling instead of a firm handshake and a job well done.
Well, I'd like to know, I don't know what the requirements are. And it's got to be different based off the position, right? Is there something you have to do to earn it that they have requirements for? Or is it just an arbitrary, well, he looks like he's done a good job? Because if it is the latter, then I guess the tongue-in-cheek reference that I'm saying, the tongue-in-cheek joke I'm making maybe is true, where they're just yeah, this guy's kind of a freak and he's done really well so far. So let's just say he earned his black stripe or lost his black stripe faster than anybody has ever lost their black stripe. So I don't know, that's the big secret, right? Is what actually goes into, is there a rubric that they have printed out well, a wide receiver loses his black stripe if he does all these things, or if he's just Jeremiah Smith. A lineman loses his black stripe if he does all these things. Or is it just when we decide you lose your black stripe, you lose your black stripe.
So I'm going to go ahead and say it's the equivalent of the eye test, right? It's like, yeah, coaches love the eye test. And here's the thing. I'm going to go ahead and say, with respect, that Ryan Day, who seems like a guy who really knows how to work the system, and I mean that in a good way. It's not a shot at him. I would imagine he uses it differently than maybe Tressel used it. Like, right? Like, I feel like Tressel was like, all right, the black stripe comes off. It means you're finally a Buckeye. You're not a Buckeye till we do that. And that there's a reward system there. I think there's a little bit of clout when Ryan Day does it. And it does, like, I don't love it as much. I mean, listen, I'm not doubting that Jeremiah Smith has earned or will have earned it. I think we all expect him to be a freak. But there's a part of me that's like, this feels a little hair tussly. Yeah. I don't really like hair tussly. And it's funny, like, it's not a generational thing because a lot of people in my generation did like hair tussles. Like, you got it, slugger. Here's your this or that, the other. I don't do well with compliments. I think you might have even noticed that. Like, I'm really bad at getting compliments. I'm not like, oh, thank you. This, like, I know I'm like, please don't say nice things about me. I don't trust them. And that's just because of decades of abuse from my own family. But like, my mom's family should be they're Hungarian. There's you never can do nice things. Like, hey, I heard you came home to Cleveland. Yeah. Well, don't screw that up. That's like the welcome home I got is, man, it's so great to have you. I don't think it's going to good luck. That's a tough position to take over, and you're kind of a dipshit. So I don't know if this is going to work out, but we're happy you're home. Like, that's the kind of thing I'm used to, and I'm like, oh, thank you so much. So no, I mean, now what I will say is, I think this sets a certain expectation for Jeremiah Smith, which is funny because, Carnell Tate popped a lot last year. Yeah. I think Carnell Tate had a better quarterback. I think we would be raving about and frothing at the mouth this year. So I think there was one wide receiver not held back by Kyle McCord last year was Marvin Harrison Jr. Cade Stover had a couple moments. G. Scott had a few moments. Carnell had a few moments. Emeka Egbuka had a few moments. But by and large, like, that to me shows the greatness of Marvin Harrison. So now the fact that I think no matter who the quarterback is, that one of these guys will be able to do something significant with these wide receivers, I think it's okay to start hyping yourself up for Jeremiah Smith. Yeah, I do.
And I joke about a rubric. I do think Ryan Day probably uses it, like you said, kind of as like just like an awards, like almost like an award type thing or a recognition that, this player's here. He's really, really good. He's earned his stripe already coming off. And somebody like Jeremiah Smith, who, let's face it, you're going to be constantly playing this game with, where you're trying to keep him happy and make sure he's here and he wants to be here and all these different things. Like, I think you look at it and it probably is more of an arbitrary thing than the jokes about rubrics and what actually requires you to lose it or whatever. So I think that's probably true. I think he's probably playing that game with a lot of different guys and really everybody on the team and just kind of saying like, well, hey, you earned it, because you're trying to kind of smooth things over and keep them happy and let them know like they matter and that they're a Buckeye and all these different things. So, but I also think I to be honest, if that is what it is, and if there's, I guess, older heads out there that are gonna, make fun of that and be like, oh, they're just soft nowadays, and it's a lot easier to earn things. And back in my day, we had to walk uphill 15 miles in the snow to get our black stripe taken off. Then I think like I think it just speaks to the times, not in the way that you're thinking. Like, I think it speaks to the evolution of college football, where you can't just go out and be like, well, you have to earn everything, because no, like that's how, like in the recruiting system we have now with the NIL and everything involved in it, you have to constantly basically be, I don't want to say pampering. I don't know if that's the right word, but you do have to kind of be catering to certain players at all times, because that at a moment's notice, they could say, well, hey, I'm going to go jump in the transfer portal and I'm out of here. I mean, look at the Caden Proctor situation this week, which I know we're going to talk about. Like, you want to make sure that you're keeping those star players especially happy because they're so important to your program and they're so important to your success as a head coach and as a program. So, I can't really blame him if that's the way he is using it, and I think it's great. I do think too, though, on some level, it does speak to Jeremiah Smith being just an absolute freak. I mean that, and that's what people were saying about him coming in. Who was it that said? Was it Denzel Burke who had the quotes about, going up against Marv was hard enough, and going up against Carnell Tate was hard enough, but now I'm going up against Jeremiah Smith, and that dude's like the real freaking deal. So I think everybody within the program probably feels like it was warranted for him to lose his as quickly as he did, because he just seems like he's going to be an absolute stud of a player. And I do think, we had the conversation earlier in the offseason about what kind of impact he's going to have in year one. I think I am banking on the fact that he probably has a larger impact than even like Carnell Tate did last year as a true freshman with the Buckeyes. Because Jeremiah Smith strikes me as the kind of kid that they're going to have a tough time like redshirting and only letting play. I think 6 games. So we'll see, but I do think he's going to be like a player that gets on the field quite a bit and that they're utilizing each and every single week because he's that damn good.
I think you're flip-flopping. I think when we talked about Jeremiah Smith back in December, I vaguely remember you saying, well, he's a freshman. Let's not go too crazy here. Am I wrong? And I was the one saying, no, that's the whole point of having a Jeremiah Smith. I think the point is to have high expectations. Are you flip-flopping on your Jeremiah Smith take now 4 months into the Jeremiah Smith experience in Columbus?
I think presented with new information, yes. There's not really new information.
Yeah, there's no information. Well, that's a good point. Thank you for owning that.
Well, no, so here's the thing. I do think that there's an element to Ohio State. I've talked about this a bunch of times. I talked about it earlier in the week on an earlier episode. I think that there's an element to Ohio State where players come in understanding like they might not start their freshman year and they might just kind of be like a role player and then they develop into that guy. And I think that still is true for a lot of players. And I think players who sign into Ohio State kind of go into it understanding that. I said that on Tuesday. But I also think that there's just certain guys like Jeremiah Smith who are so good that, and as we're having this conversation about like the black stripes, the black stripe situation, I think because you're constantly playing this battle of like, okay, how good is this guy? Where does he fit? How are we going to utilize him? And just trying to make sure you're keeping people happy. I think that he's going to have a bigger role than maybe I initially thought. That doesn't mean I think he's going to be like wide receiver one. This team has too many good wide receivers to just let him be like maybe top of the depth chart. But I do think like we're going to see him in a good amount of games this year. And he's going to probably like, it's not just going to be, he comes in when they're blowing out, I don't know, Indiana by like 40. It's going to be like, okay, he's part of the offense and he gets worked in and he's taking a rep. And I don't know if that means he gets redshirted this year, because I think he's going to end up probably playing in more games than the 6.
You know what I think I'm going to need here? Because this is awfully Anthony Lima of you. All right. With respect and love. All right. I consider myself a friend of yours.
Why can't we just change? Why can't our minds change?
No. Because nothing should have changed your mind. That's the damn point. There's nothing that happened should have changed your mind. But I'm going to say right now, I think you should put out your yardage projections and touchdown projections for Jeremiah Smith so that we have a baseline to go back to in the future. So how many yards? Let's give that freshman prediction. You said he's going to be playing in key games, so he won't be wide receiver one. Give me the yardage number and touchdown numbers, just so we can keep you in check, because you clearly cannot be trusted with Jeremiah Smith. Give me the numbers and touchdowns.
Okay, so just to compare, I looked up Carnell Tate's numbers from last year. He had 18 receptions for 264 yards and a touchdown. I will say that Jeremiah Smith finishes with 350 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Now, is this like a Price is Right situation? You can't go over? but it's like closest to the pin wins.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
All right.
And for what it's worth, Carnell Tate appeared in 13 games last year.
All right. So what were your numbers that you said? 350 yards and what?
350 yards and 2 touchdowns.
All right. I'm going to go 351 yards and 3 touchdowns. I'm $1 bobbing you just to keep you honest.
But how does that help you though? You can't win in this situation because if he goes over that, then he goes over.
Well, no, if he goes over, I win. So if he has,
you said we can't. You said that you can't go over.
No, Price is Right rules. You got to understand. Yeah. I can't predict more than he has. What? I said Price is Right rules.
You said if you go over. You said if you go over, then you're wrong. You only went over by $1.
No, the point. Yes, if you go over, you're wrong. Meaning, if he has 400 yards and you say 401 yards, you're wrong. Boom, you lose. Everybody knows. Listen, you can challenge me on a lot of shit. You call me out on my Price is Right rule explanations, and you and I will meet in Temecula, sir. So 351 yards and 3 touchdowns, 350 yards, 2 touchdowns.
But okay, am I wrong that in Price is Right, if you go over though, it goes to the person who was like next closest that was below the number, right?
Yes, but that was exactly how I explained it.
Right. So I'm saying
projection go over.
I thought you were going to go $1 below me because then
that wouldn't work.
Yes, it would because then you would end up.
That's not how $1 Bob works. Have you never seen it?
Oh, because you think I see what you're saying. You think he's going to go over 350 yards anyway. So
yes.
Okay, I got you.
Yes. And I think you're a chicken shit by hedging your bets on 350 yards. So I'm going to put 351 so there's no wiggle room. He's either at 350 or you lose and I win. Or we both
So how many yards do you
lose?
How many yards do you think he's going to be?
351 yards
no.
3 touchdowns.
Realistically, how do you think he's going to be like 400? Like you think he's going to be closer to 4?
Unlike you, I set a prediction, and I fucking stick with that prediction. All right? I am not a slippery wizard. I'm an oak. All right? I am strong and sturdy like an oak. I am an oak, not an oat. An oat is not strong or sturdy. An oak. That's where I'm at. Drop your Jeremiah Smith projections on the 92.3 The Fan YouTube channel. Now that I'm done berating poor Spencer, you deserve better. I'm just very feisty. When we come back, we'll get into the quarterback hype. I think I now know what's going on there. And the maybe nightmare scenario for Ohio State. That's next, right here on Sons of the Shoe. But first, a quick word from our sponsors.